The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and welcome to the iSpring Solutions webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today as we are going to be talking about creating enhanced learner assessments. My name is Paulina, I am a community manager and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. And as a speaker, as always for this webinar series, and by the way, this is our 5th lesson, we have Michael Shiyashi. Hi Michael, what's up? How are you doing? We can't hear you though.
How about now? I said, hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Michael is a technologist at Alternative Media and is a wonderful person and a pleasure to work with, and he will be more than happy to disclose this topic for us today. And I've also have invited our senior technical support engineer, Michael Shvedov. Hi, Michael. Thank you very much for joining. How are you today?
Hi, everyone. I'm fine, thanks.
Wonderful. So Michael will be taking care of your questions during Q&A session that are necessarily iSpring related. So if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, or maybe feature requests, you are more than welcome to submit them in the question box. And you may find it somewhere on the right side of your GoToWebinar panel. It should be at the bottom. And also, I wanted to let you know that we have a very exciting opportunity for you during this webinar series. You can get the special bonus, and this is an online face-to-face consultation with Michael Shiyashi. You can address your questions related to your project, to e-learning, if maybe you are going to start e-learning project in your organization and you don't know what to begin with. This is your chance to address your questions directly to Michael. And we have prepared for you 3 different options. This would be 60-minute, 45, or 30-minute consultation. And in order to receive this wonderful bonus, all you need to do is to answer this question. What did you learn during this webinar series? And post it under our main blog post in iSpring Solutions blog. And just simply get your colleagues, friends, family to vote for your answer. And at the end of this webinar series, we will just simply see the top 3 answers, and this will be our top 3 winners. And I just wanted to let you know that closer to the end, we will be more specific regarding the dates when we will announce the winners. And I think that at this point we are ready to begin. So Michael, let me please pass the mic over to you.
Fantastic.
All right.
Okay, you should be seeing my screen.
I can see it.
Good. Well, this is very exciting. Welcome, everyone. We're going to talk about Enquiring Minds, creating enhanced learning assessments and quizzes today. This, as Paulina mentioned, this is number 5 of 10. And so I'm very excited for you all to be with me today, so I appreciate it. And thank you to iSpring to host this. I really appreciate this. This is a fantastic opportunity for us to get together and discuss things and talk about how to create e-learning content. So we'll talk briefly about me. We have a lot of information to get through today. So my name is Michael Shiyashi. I am technologist at Alternative Media, which I'll pull up here just so you can take a look at it. We do innovation, creativity, technology, and various other aspects. I've been working in IT and information technology for 20 years or so, and focusing on e-learning and multimedia and digital media, 3D modeling, games and simulation. I have a background in film and 3D modeling. So I'm very excited today to talk with you about quizzes and creating quizzes in iSpring. I'd like to talk to you about how we want to go over this discussion. We want to keep it casual, conversational, which means please use the chat. Please use the discussion area. Let's share ideas. Let's share questions and problems and any success stories we've had. Make sure you're an active part of it, and make sure that if you'd like, you can tweet using @massedev or at iSpring Pro and continue the conversation there. But feel free to jump in at any time. So let's take a quick look back at what we talked about last week. We talked about voice talent and whether you should do it yourself or hire pro talent. There are key advantages to doing both or either. When looking for pro talent, you should consider various things like what's the experience level of that voiceover talent? Does that person have the ability to imbue character or inflection and excitement to the voiceover file? And is there professionalism both at recording and as well as getting the files to you as well? So I've included a link there as well. And of course, that also has to do with budget, whether or not you can afford voice talent or whether you have to do it yourself, which many of us, based on our budgetary constraints, have to do it ourselves. We talked about audio and video equipment. Later on last week, we also talked about webcams and different webcams you can use. I've included some tips on where to find out how to figure out what microphone you should get and what's the best microphone. And then we talked about actually creating and recording and editing audio and video inside iSpring. And in that, I included some good resources to look at, as well as we had as we do today, had an iSpring expert with us as well. So we also talked about maybe creating vignettes from the PowerPoint built-in animations and transitions and using these either in the export and the publish in iSpring or as self-contained animation vignettes. So let's take a look about what we're going to talk in the webinar series. We're on week 5. We're midway through this really exciting webinar series. Today we're going to talk about quizzes and interactions. Next week we'll talk about interactive and immersive content and how to do that with iSpring. In the following weeks we'll talk about the best practices for user experience and user interface. We'll talk about later making sure that we put the final touches and touch-ups on our e-learning content, making sure that it's viable, that we have thought about accessibility constraints, and then we'll talk about ways we can publish and share, and then finally in week 10 we'll have a celebration and we'll look at some really great examples of how to do stuff in iSpring. So let's talk about what we'll talk about discuss today in today's webinar. So we'll do a lot of information. We'll cover some theoretical information about what kind of quizzes and if they're needed. We'll understand how the brain works. We'll talk about some pro tips, understanding some good basics of authoring quizzes and some mistakes. And then we'll take a look about how to actually create these quizzes and knowledge checks in iSpring. And then later on after that, we'll look at ways to enhance these to make them even better. So let's talk about quizzes. To be or not to be, of course, do we really need quizzes? So are knowledge checks needed? Well, I would say in some cases, depending on the content, of course, maybe, maybe not. So as you know, in e-learning, what we really try to do, and I've pointed to the spaghetti here, the spaghetti noodles, the adage is, we throw it on the wall and we see what sticks. We're constantly throwing information, hopefully well managed information and concise information to our learners to make sure that we get the information they need and communicate the ideas and the knowledge we're trying to communicate to them. And so in some cases, and in many cases, we want knowledge checks and quizzes that support and augment this learning and this need for our learners for something to stick. But we don't want to punish them. Meaning, I'm sure you've all had, an e-learning experience where you got to the end and there was quiz after quiz after quiz question. And so we don't want to punish our learners. We want to make sure that we test their knowledge or engage their mind, but we don't want to punish them. And so that goes back to what I keep saying is make sure you're an advocate for your learner and that you would want to take this learning as well. And of course, sometimes we don't have that choice depending on our clients or stakeholders or policy or even legal constraints in some cases. Knowledge checks are required pre and post test. So, but let's think about ways when we, again, within that milieu of whether the tests are needed or not. And so there's a great article by Art Cohn that talks about the whys and whens of assessment. And I'll put it on screen just briefly so you can see it. I've included the link here today, but I suggest you go out and read it. It's pretty long, but it's actually really good information about how the mind works. And in this, Art Cohn talks about different ways that we receive information, we process it, and what we do with it. And the reason I bring this up is because as we consider different ways of thinking, this article suggests that there's a 3-stage method, or a three-stage model, and I'll show that to you in a moment. But the three-stage model is basically just a best guess, and it's our best guess right now of how the mind works. And here's from that same article, here's an image from there, and we get, you see, incoming information, environmental stimuli, into our minds, and we can take these in from our various senses, our vision, hearing, or touch. And there are some information that just we do not retain, but some information we process, and that goes into the short-term memory. And in that short-term memory, we can rehearse that information, and you see a note above of capacity of 7 plus or minus 2, and you can read what that means, meaning doing things at a number of 7, or 7 multiple times, helps us retain that information, but you can read that more in the article. But when we rehearse that information in our short-term memory, we process it to long-term memory. And then, of course, whatever isn't processed in long-term memory is also lost. So you see there's a lot of opportunity to both lose and to retain different memories. So I bring this up because there's those ways of the repetition of doing it. So testing immediately may help develop your short-term memory for various learning that you've done, and then coming back later, days later, weeks later, whatever it is, may help test the long-term information and see what has been processed beyond the short term. And so do these quizzes help? Well, it depends. It depends on the learner. It depends on whether you're testing short-term information or long-term. So keep this in mind as you develop your own quiz questions, and understand that it depends on the content and your learner. And I know that's quite heady, but I wanted us to have information with there as well. So let's talk about some core concepts when we actually create quizzes. But before that, Colina, if we could have our first poll question, and I'll go ahead and read it while you post it here.
Sure.
Okay. How long do you or your team typically spend developing quiz interactions? And it's available in the poll section to the right. And if you expand the poll area, you can choose maybe less than 10%, around 10 to 25%, 25 to 50%, or over half of the time do you spend developing quizzes. And again, these aren't exact amounts, just take your best guess, and then we'll discuss. So, Paulina, as the polls go here for a moment, let's make sure that we keep an eye on time. There's a lot of information today, and I don't want us to run short of time. So
Sure. So let me then close the poll right now and then share the results with you. So it looks like most of our audience spent 10 to 25% of their time developing quiz interactions.
okay, very good. So that's very interesting. So here's why I asked that. So thank you, Paulina. Let me get my video window out of the way. Here we go. So before we get into that, so let's look at some common quiz types when we develop quizzes and knowledge checks. There's multiple choice. There's the yes or no, or it can also be thought of as true false. The open-ended, where you ask a question and ask them to think about it and add information. The fill in the blank, which is usually typically one word in a sentence to complete it. Matching, where you match one to another, and then definition. And of course, there's several different types available when you create an iSpring. So let's take a look at some common mistakes as you're authoring quizzes. So there's a fantastic article by industry leader Patty Shank, and it's online, and I'll pull it up for you. And it talks about some of the do's and don'ts from her experience of avoiding assessment mistakes, and that can compromise the quality. So I advise you to take a look at it. It's a great article. But some highlights from that include making sure that testing isn't just part of the total assessment, but that includes all information that you want to cover, and that it's a viable, just as viable part of the e-learning content creation as the rest of it. And it's absolutely necessary. So that kind of answers that question earlier. Are knowledge checks or quizzes necessary? In this particular article, the author says definitely so. So let's zoom into some serious mistakes that she points out. Again, this is just the highlight. You can read the article. But sometimes is the knowledge and quizzes are only given the high-level attention they deserve. They are not integrated properly in the entire process, meaning as you consider how you're going to develop your entire e-learning, sometimes they're not given the proper amount of time. They're the wrong type of question. They're not valid enough, meaning the question is sort of right, but it doesn't drill down into the information you want to share or disseminate to your learners, or they're even just poorly written, and that can be semantics or grammar. So those are some things you can take a look at it and think about as you develop your own e-learning quizzes and questions. Here's another tip from industry leader Sam Rogers, part of the TLDC group that I'm a part of. Sam Rogers, in his article in LinkedIn, talks about some ways to create specifically multiple choice questions. Let's take a quick look at that online, and you can again look at these later. But this is a really great article where Sam goes into the do's and don'ts and what you should consider when creating a multiple choice question. And again, some of the highlights from that are making sure that your questions focus and center upon and build from your learning objectives. So remember, early in the course, in lesson 1 and webinar 1, we talked about making sure as you look at your roadmap, looking at what the content is, what your learners are, and what you want to disseminate to your learners. And make sure your quiz questions also support that information. That you take your time with questions and develop them correctly. Remember earlier in the Patty Schenk article, she mentioned that questions weren't developed well enough or not long enough or well developed. So be succinct in your information and make sure, and interestingly enough, as we talk about time, I remember in the poll question I asked how long you developed quizzes. Mr. Rogers actually asked that you develop your questions before the rest of your learning. Now, I bring that up because I think many of us have the common mistake of developing them after or developing them concurrently along with other e-learning or as instructional designers who may design the entire course and then we get to the questions, or it's an afterthought. So I bring that up because in this particular article, he points out that it's very important that you develop the questions as robustly as you do the entire development process, and maybe even early on, so that you can come back and edit and that they have as much attention as your actual e-learning content. So keep that in mind. Obviously, they're very important. And as you're creating questions, you actually have to also ask who's going to actually author the questions, who will QA these once they're written, and who actually implements these inside your e-learning, whether it's in a web environment, a device environment, or on a learning management system. Will this something that needs to sit either in or outside a learning management system? And so you have to plan accordingly. You have to understand within your entire process how this fits. Are you part of a team where you have a SME writing the questions? Is your client going to provide them, or simply is it you? And I think many of us will find it's really us. We are the ones creating the quiz questions, and we have to author them. So enough of the theoretical stuff. What I want to talk about is start creating some of the quizzes in iSpring. So give you a preview of what I'm going to do. I'm going to open up another PowerPoint slide here in a moment, and we're going to go in and actually create questions on the fly of various types. We'll create one each of multiple choice, a true false, an open-ended, a fill in the blank, a matching, and a definition. So, and then later, we'll talk about ways to augment these and enhance these using audio and video, a little bit of branching, and also using the slide view in order to enhance it. So let me break over to the other slide. And while I do, Paulina, are there any questions coming in?
Not so far, but there was
Okay,
one question about sharing the links that you've been sharing, so I'm sending them in the chat so you guys should be able to see them.
That's great. Thank you for sharing this, Paulina. I appreciate it. So, and also remember, we have our resident expert, the other Michael, that's standing by if you have any specific iSpring questions. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the iSpring tab, and we will take a look at creating a quiz. And before I do, let me just go back and make sure we're going to start with a multiple choice question. I've lost my mouse. Sorry. There we go. Okay, stand by while I get rid of this slide. So hold on. I think I'm having a conflict between PowerPoint. It doesn't like the full slide as well as the iSpring quiz maker. So hold on. I have to get rid of one or the other. Okay, so when we create quizzes, this is the initial menu that comes up. We can create graded or surveys, and of course the difference being a submitted score at the end or questions that are not graded. But let's focus on graded quizzes. That's what most of us will deal with. Again, you see when you create it, we are given just a blank canvas to create it, a starting place wherein we have an intro slide, a place to add questions, and then the results slide. And this can all be adjusted and edited as we go. In this case, we'll go to the question group. We'll add a graded question. We'll do multiple choice first. And in this case, we will do something simple. What is your favorite color? Okay, and so I'm using the interface here in iSpring. Okay, and here we add the answers and the distractors, and we choose which one is correct here. And that's all we're going to do for a moment. We're going to preview it so you have an idea. And again, we'll edit this and make it a little prettier later, but we'll just preview this particular question so that everyone gets an idea of what it would look like on screen. Okay, and the learner can come in and choose any of these. Again, this is multiple choice, single answer. Many of you may also know multiple choice, multiple answer. I'll go ahead and show you that as well. And again, as the learner would come in, we have an intro slide here, which we can edit, enhance, or I believe we can get rid of this, but normally it would be good to have a welcome slide where it has some specific instructions here. So we'll also do a graded question where it's multiple choice, multiple response, or multiple answer. In this one, we will say, which of the following are mobile devices? Okay. And again, same thing here. We will add the information below, and then we will tell the system which is the right or wrong. So okay, so in this case, the laptop will say, while it is mobile, you can pick it up and take it anywhere. We will say only smartphone and tablet, just for this particular example. Now, before I do anything, I'll just go ahead and save it, and this will save to the same area wherever our PowerPoint was created. I have a blank one opened up, and I've already saved it, so it knows where to save it. And we'll preview this question as well, just to take a quick look. Okay, and so again, instead of being one choice, we have multiple answers here, and we can choose any or all or none and submit those as our questions. So again, just giving a rudimentary example of how to create them. Let's go back and look at my list. So now we want to create a true-false question. Go back to the quiz creator. We'll do a graded question of true-false. We will say the moon is made of green cheese. True or false. Okay, and we'll say that in this case it's true, and even though this is sort of a tongue-in-cheek question, we'll say this is true. We'll save it. Again, we'll go in the preview, just to give you an idea of what it looks like. And notice we have different items available on the preview, which we'll go into in just a little bit, but moon made of green cheese, true or false. And again, it looks very similar to your multiple choice singular answer, but again, this is a specific type, which is true or false. So going really quickly into the preview, we can put different groups. We have a group question 1 that we're using just as default. We could make an entire different group. We could preview just the question as I've done one by one for you. We can view the entire group or the quiz. So in a moment, when we get to the all the questions created, we will look at the entire group. Going back to our list, we'll do an open-ended. So let's go back here. And let's see. So we'll type in. Okay. So this is where you would be able to type your answer in. And so we'll say, how fun is it to create quizzes? Okay, and we have an area here, and we can add the correct answer here. And so let's take a preview. Okay, and we would have our learner be able to add information here. Okay, Going back to our list, and again, I'm going through these one by one just so you see how easy it is to create the questions, and I also want to show you examples. We'll do fill in the blank. Graded question again. We'll do fill in the blank, and let's see. So fill in the blank below is a good starting point. You can make this specific to whatever you want. So we will say, let's see. So in this case, we will say, again, let's go with colors. So red, and we will add a blank here, and yellow. Those will be our two. So in this case, I'm going to go to the slide view. So Michael, I'm having a little trouble moving this over. Do you know what I'm doing incorrectly?
Can you please tell me what you're trying to do?
I just want to add more
I was
words.
not paying attention. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, no problem. So I need to add another blank so that we can see that, and I want to add the word yellow here, but I need to add the words in between. So I need to add some words right here.
I believe you just need to click between these blank bars.
Okay, I'm just missing it for some reason. So yeah, I'm not sure why. So let me go in the slide view. I wonder if I can do it here. Oh.
Or you can just start typing text before you add the second blank.
Sure, let's go in here and delete these. So I'll delete these for a moment and we'll get the full words, and that'll allow me to see what I'm doing. So mixing colors, this is much better. So I just couldn't see part of my words. So thank you for your help. So mixing the color, okay, in this case we'll say insert blank and we'll say red. And then we'll say with the color, sorry for that delay everyone, the color yellow. And then we'll give the answer, this is a suggested answer so people know what to do with it. So mix the color orange. Okay, so there we go, and we will preview this slide. Sorry about that everyone. Okay, so as we get it, the learner has the ability to click inside here and add specific choices. We've specified the choices, so it'll check against that whether it's correct or not. In this case, we'll just kind of jokingly say blue and green, make orange, and then we would have the submit, which would give the right and wrong answers, which we have not specified yet. So it would just be correct or incorrect. In this case, it's not correct because it didn't match the words we had. So let's save to make sure we save it. Go back to our questions. We'll do matching and definition, and then we'll take a look at ways to augment it. So let's do matching. So matching is pretty fun, actually. So, and as you can see, it creates the interface for you. You can have item one match with item, or sorry, item one match with match one, item two, and you can create these. So we'll leave the directions as this. So we'll say, so car, and we'll say that matches to the response of mechanic. Thinking about things that, you know, so if we say humans and a doctor, and then we say animals and a vet, and of course that would be veterinarian. So, and I'll just use vet for short here. And again, we could edit this information and add clearer instructions, but let's take a quick look at the question itself. This would be where we drag the matching area or the one to another to make sure it matches. In this case, I'll get it wrong on purpose so you can see, again, the already installed default incorrect. So we'll go back and create the definition question. And in this case, we'll use the word bank so they can pick from different ones. So drag the words and drop them to the appropriate places. So you can see what that does by default. Just to have an idea, you have a list of questions below and you can drag them. And again, I'll edit this a little bit so we can see it, but I want to just see the function first. So we will say, and let me get rid of these. So get rid of that because we don't need directions again. We'll start from a clean slate and we will say, we'll say insert blank, and here I'll say dogs and insert blank cats can be friends but are normally thought of as enemies. Okay, and we'll preview this again, and you can see it's changed, and we have the words to pick from below, and we can pull them up. Okay, and that's incorrect, although we only have 2 answers. We could adjust that later. So let's save and close this out. So these are the basic types. There's a whole lot more, as you can see, including hotspot, which is where you put an image in and can specify specific areas to click on, and sequences, which means you would drag them in the proper order. There's a lot to work with, but I just wanted to show you some of the basic ones to get you started. I've saved, and we can come back to this in a moment. Once we save, it will load this information up on this slide so you know where you are. We can go back in it in a moment and edit it. But for now, let's go back to the main slide. And again, in a moment, we'll talk about enhancements. So let's go ahead and talk about enhancements and how you can use iSpring to make these quizzes even more interactive and fun. And so if you do mathematics questions or even physics questions, there's a math editor built in with iSpring, and you can put formulas directly into it. Again, many of these you might not use, but if you use scientific information, this is important to use. And many of you that have created these know that these special characters sometimes require ASCII characters or alt text, and this is not needed using the editor. So that's very cool and something I wanted to alert you to. Also, something we did not look at just now is the branching. So when I talk about branching, it's allowing the feedback either inside the question or going to a specific question because of the right or wrong answer to allow some custom personalization for the learner. Maybe they got it wrong and they need to have some more information. Maybe we want to give them specific feedback if they got some of it right. So we can do this a couple of different ways. The first I want to alert your attention to is using Presentation Explorer. And inside iSpring, I'll go to our other slide deck so that you can see where it's located. It would be here. And depending on the number of slides, you can go into it and you can use the Presentation Explorer and branch to specific items. Let's say you don't, for quiz branching, let's say you want them to go to a different slide. I don't have any additional slides here, but you can control where they would go to before and after the quiz here. And that's on the Presentation Explorer. And here's an example where there's several quizzes and you can branch from it. You can say next slide on pass or fail, or go to a specific slide, anyone inside your slide deck. So that's very cool, depending on whether or not you have specific quizzes that may require more information, or you want them to drill down into additional information, or have refreshers based on passing or failing. So, but you can also provide feedback inside the quiz itself. I've included some screenshots here just so you can take understand, but we'll take a look here in the actual quiz area. And so depending on whether someone gets right or wrong, by default, you can go to the next question, or you can do back by question where if they get it right or wrong, they go to a specific place in your quiz. So let's take a quick look at that here in the quiz area. We'll go back into our quiz that we've created. And let's say that the second one here, we want to say if they get this correct, and we'll go to our feedback and branching here, and we'll go by question on this one. If they get it correct, they go to the next question, and if they get it incorrect, Let's just go back to the first one and we'll see how that goes. And we can preview this. We'll preview the group. That'll just do this question 1 group here. We'll say favorite color is red. We didn't choose the right one. Okay. And we'll say that we'll get this wrong, so hopefully we go back to question 1. We'll say it was definitely the laptop, which again, for our purposes, we said was not. So when we continue, we go back to the first question. So that's how the branching works. And again, you could do that in various ways, but I wanted to show you just how easy it is here. I'll go ahead and save, and then we'll get back to the slides. Okay. And of course, you can also enhance with audio and video. So those of you that have created quiz questions know that many of you have taken quiz questions that they're just slide after slide, page after page of just questions and answers, just multiple choice and nothing else. So I would say there's a great opportunity here to add audio and video within your quiz. You can add them to the questions themselves. You can add them to the answers. You can add it in feedback. You can add it in the branching area. Let's take a quick look at some places you can add that just so you understand. And it's included in the interface when you create the quiz questions. So let's take a look at it, and we'll go back to what is your favorite color. And over here on the right, notice that we can add both audio and video. Here we would insert audio, and let's say on the quiz question itself, we wanted to include some information, and I'll just put in a random audio file here. When we preview this, and you may not be able to hear it, okay, we have an audio file available for playing here. Okay, and so it played. It was in my headset. You may not have been able to hear it.
We actually heard it, so.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Nice music.
And so here, let's just have a little sample there. So that reminds me of Looney Tunes cartoons for some reason, of the black and white ones.
That's what I thought about.
That's funny. So, but we have this ability to add extra media here for our learner, and the same thing. I'll have to make this a little smaller so I can see it. Hold on. Let me drag this to the right. There we go. The GoToWebinar tools are covering up what I need here, and of course the same thing for video. We can add various videos here. I think I have 1 or 2 I can stick in. Again, you probably saw the video last week. And let's go into audio and remove it so we don't have 2 different things. We'll preview this question, and in the preview window, after it converts the video to what it needs, we should see both the question and an associated video. So how would you use this? Well, you could have some information here. You know, watch the video first and answer the question. And this is where you would have information here. So really what we're trying to do is not potentially add video and audio to every single slide, but we're creating interesting ways to produce quizzes that capture the attention or allow the learner to have different channels of information coming in rather than just reading question after question. So I would say in any of those, and let's take a quick look, and also within the quiz, ways to add them in the feedback and other in branching. Going back into the quiz maker tool, again, we had question number 2 with some branching. Here, we can add branching. Okay, here we can say yes or, you know, that's right, you answered correctly, or no, you did not. In these areas as well, we can edit this and say incorrect or correct, or add whatever textual information we want, but we can also add audio here on these files in order to support this information or give the learner additional information. And if we have audio there, obviously we can edit using the audio tool that we talked about last week. So I won't add any there because it's the same setup as I did before, but just know that you can add it in this area as well, which is very interesting, and it's a great way to enhance what you have on screen, and again, allowing some slight interest to come in for the quizzes. So let's take a quick look at the slide view. And I really like what can be done with the slide view. I have sort of a screenshot up to give you a preview of what I'm talking about. We'll go in and take a look at the Quizmaster here in a moment, Quizmaker. And so you can really fine tune the look and feel of the layout. You can add themes, and this is where you can animate some things if you want, but we'll focus on layout and themes in the Quizmaker. So we'll go back in. My mouse has disappeared, so I'm just guessing where it is. There it is. It came back. Welcome back, mouse. Okay, so we've created these slides. So what I'll do is go into the slide view, and we have, just like you would in PowerPoint, we have our questions as slides on the left. In this case, I'll apply a theme to all of them, and as you can see in each of these, I'll just preview. As we saw in the preview, these are just black and white. These are white areas with black text, but we can really enhance the look and feel of these, and also to match the look and feel of our overall slides and actual e-learning. So I'll pick something somewhat subtle. Let's go with this one. As I apply it, it applies it to all slides, and now we have a very nice dark background, white text, and everything has been adjusted, all the slides, by that simple change. And so let's go back in. We can also look at the slide view here. Remember, in this slide view, let's say, and this is different, so in this particular one on the multiple choice, we can change the layout.
And Michael,
so here's the layout.
Just a quick question. Is it possible to resize the video on the slide?
It is. So let's take a look at a couple of different ways here, just using we'll do it with the layout, and then we'll also do it. So those of you that are familiar with PowerPoint obviously know that you can use layout to add various built-in functionality to your slides. So here's the default as is. Let's do a slide block number 3 that's a little bit different, just so you get a look and feel, and then we'll do 1. And again, just kind of change it up, we'll use balance number 2. Notice that on this balance that it's much bigger. And let's say that's a great place to start, but just like in PowerPoint slides, you can adjust every single thing in here in the layout. Now, you have to be careful, of course, because you don't want to overbalance things or make them too big, but notice that simply by grabbing the corners or whatever, I can actually resize this to a bigger size. I have my same answers here, and all I did was move the boxes around a little bit. We can do that on each of these, and if each of these had a movie or a video, they would have the same ability. But again, notice that we have some really great places to start with layout here. Within the layout as well, just like I added extra information earlier, you can add images, video, audio, or formulas. So again, we can have additional information right on screen available to our users. And as you mentioned earlier, as we change these, go back to layout, we can change them in ways that make better use of our media. So let's move our question box over just a little bit. And again, I'm just grabbing these handles, so to speak, of each of these content window areas and moving them over. So you see it's quite easy to create very enriched looking slide questions, question by question, and make them look very customized and very clean and nice looking. And we'll go ahead and save that. So let's say also on this one where we made the one bigger, we can reset and it undoes the change, but I like what we've done here, so we'll go ahead and save and close. So I wanted to alert that to you all. First of all, we added a theme and then we adjusted the layout, but it's a really great way to add a very enriched, nice looking quiz into your content. So let's go back into the slides. So let's have another poll question to invite some interactivity here. So how many of you have used any of the iSpring enhancement we talked about? Polina, if you could open the poll.
Yep.
While I read this. So how many of you used any of the e-learning or the enhancements we talked about in your quizzes, and how many of them have you used? So none, 1 to 2, some of them, which would be obviously more than 2, or every single one that we've talked about so far.
Right, and it looks like almost everyone has taken a vote, and I will allow a couple more seconds for you guys to vote for the option and let us know. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll right now and share the answers with you guys.
Okay, taking a look, it looks like most of you,
some and none.
like we're equally divided there, so that's great. So many of you have used 3 or more of those tools, and that's great, and there's a few of us that haven't used any of these. So I'm hoping that when you saw the enhancements, that's a way for you to experiment with your own quizzes and enhance your own look and feel. Again, as anything, as any enhancements, whether it's images or videos or audio, we want to make sure that it supports the questions and supports the learning itself. So even on regular non-quiz slides or non-quiz questions, your media, whatever you use, should support whatever you're trying to, message you're trying to give. So as we create these, I want you to experiment with what's best for you. But also remember that as we create these, there are different things we can do with results. Of course, we can have specific scoring for our LMSs. We can send these scores by email to someone. We can create a screen where the email, there's an option to add the quiz results to the learner's email, and they have a chance to enter that information at the start. Or we could just send the quiz results to a centralized email if that's the case. We can even add JavaScript if need be, or directly to whatever server it is. Now these are sort of advanced options, but I wanted you to know that they're available. And let me show you in QuizMaker where they're located. Let's go back into our quiz. And remember earlier we talked about the graded questions versus survey questions. Let's say we have a non-graded question. That might be an opportunity for the learner to explore ideas and have a worksheet that they produce of information, and they could email them to themselves. So on the result, we can go in, and this is where it's located in the quiz properties. Again, I got there by going to the gear icon of properties, opening it up, and there's a lot of different places we can make changes. We can change the name, how it's navigated, the defaults and the results, but this is where you would get to it. This is the JavaScript and sending results to the email and such. So again, I won't go into those details, but I did want you to be made aware of that and where it was located. Also within that, we can talk about testing rules in that same quiz properties area. Again, these are a little bit more advanced, but some of these you may actually use. In that same quiz properties area, you can shuffle the answers. You can allow partial answers, and those are by default. And then, of course, you can set specific rules on penalties or skipping questions. So let's say you simply want the learner to test themselves, and that would be a way that you could have them skip questions if they need to. And again, it's just up to you. There's a lot of ways to customize this, but make sure that it's customized in a way that benefits your learners. So let's also talk about ways to share quizzes and collaborate and make sure that when we're authoring these, we have the specific backup. I wanted to alert everyone to a really great tool that can be used, and that's importing and exporting quiz questions. And to do that, we go into QuizMaker, and I'll show you where that is. And so we want to make sure that, again, if we're not the only one creating quiz questions, or even if we are, we send them out to be reviewed, and we make sure we're doing them correctly. Here on the left, there's the main menu item. We can import or export, so we can export and save it. In this case, let's say we wanted to collaborate, we could import an Excel spreadsheet. And that's very interesting. So that would be a pool of questions that you could edit. That's available on the iSpring website. Let me go there. It's available for everyone. You can go to this link. And down below, you can get a sample template file, which I have here just for you to kind of view. It gives you some standard question types as well as the answers, and it sets everything up. And if you import that, let's just go ahead and do that. I believe I can do that in this. Go to our QuizMaker, and we'll import these, and you'll see these same questions come in. Go to the main menu. We'll import from an Excel. We'll browse for the file. I have to go to the file structure, be just a moment. And there's the sample ones. We'll do them in the same group, but we can, well, let's do it in a different group. So we could do it either way, but just to keep them separate from the ones we've already created, we'll do it in a different group. So take just a moment, and it is looking for errors. That's okay, we don't have images in those. Here's the imported questions, okay? And here's the one we saw on screen. And so notice that we've come in and we've imported these. In these, again, in that same manner, and I'll go ahead and save, notice that we can edit in the slide view. We can make these look, add themes. We can change the layout, as we mentioned earlier. So we can change these in a lot of ways, but they're already present now. And I want to bring this up because as we collaborate and we share, it's important that we have the ability to pass files back and forth between one another. And so this allows that to be done in a rapid manner in a way that most people are familiar with here using the Excel spreadsheet. So that's a great tool, and I wanted to alert you all to it, especially when we're collaborating and where to get that information. So another quick question, a poll question. Pauline, if you could open that up, I'll read it out loud. So when you're collaborating, yeah, go for it. Mm-hmm. So
right.
Speaking of collaborating, do you author the questions as a group, meaning with your team or clients, or is it you? And so you can use the poll question, and you can also further explain your answers in the poll area or in the discussion area. So please feel free to do that.
All right, so at this point, about 50% of our visitors, of our attendees have voted. And right now, the most votes go to by myself. Answer option.
Right. Okay, let's go ahead and close. So that's very interesting. So those of you that collaborate and actually author as a group, I wanted to alert the Excel spreadsheet to you. It's interesting that we're about half and half, but more of us are actually doing the quiz authoring by ourselves. So even if you do it by yourself, I would really recommend that you send your questions out to peers or to someone to QA your information so that we make sure we have concisely and well-written questions with no errors and that it makes sense to others, because we get into the focus and we write questions and we create our e-learning content, and sometimes we overlook the things that may stand out to others. So that's an important thing to consider. You can also send feedback out. You can email the quiz to someone so they can review it as a learner or see it as a learner would. And again, this is adding additional insight feedback as you get it. Let me show you where to do that. That's in the quiz preview area. So let's go back to our quiz maker.
So while you're doing that, question from Sue. So the image cannot be imported through the file folder?
Through the Excel template. So Michael, do you have an answer for that? I don't think that Excel, as it stands, has the, I mean, you can put an image in there, but I don't know that it comes through.
Michael, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. So you can specify the path to an image on your computer in an Excel spreadsheet, and it will be inserted into a quiz, into a question. Once you with this file, with this Excel file. So yeah, where is it to do it?
Right, and it may have just been my file, so. Whoops. I'm already in the quiz maker. So.
And a lot of people also mentioned in the question box as an answer to your question, who develops questions in your organization. So they say that they prefer to collaborate when they write the questions. So they can write them by themselves and then still get a feedback from either their colleagues or their SMEs or anybody else on their team.
I agree, and I think that's a great practice no matter what we're doing, that we make sure we get feedback, and if possible, from the learners themselves or a representative group of the learners to ensure that we are creating questions that are structured for our learners to actually use and that work and that support our learning. So I have published this, and in the quiz preview, I can then attach this after publishing to email. So I wanted to alert everyone to what I was doing here on screen. So this would be the area you would do it. You would publish first, and then as it publishes, it brings up a preview. And there's various ways to share, but one I wanted to alert everyone to is the attached to email. So I will close that. Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground today, and I wanted to go ahead and stop. We've talked about, how to make quizzes, why they're important, ways our brain works, some mistakes, some pro tools on creating multiple choice questions. And then we took a look at creating the general questions, multiple choice, true, false, and others inside iSpring, and as well as how to augment them both visually, making them look nice, adding audio and video, taking a real brief look at how to branch inside feedback and within the Presentation Explorer, augmenting with the math tool and the math editor, and making sure that we give feedback and have collaborative tools that allow us to QA and author our questions in a way that makes them the best and most concise for our learners. So if possible, let's go ahead and open it up to questions now and discussions, and then share any success stories or any tips you have for creating quizzes, or any issues or problems that you've run up against.
All right, thank you very much, Michael, for covering this topic for us today. And we have most of the questions taken care of by the other Michael, who is on the webinar with us today. So, Michael, thanks a lot for doing that for us. And let's allow about 10 minutes for other questions so that we don't go over too over the scheduled time for us. And the first one is from Diedre. I apologize if I mispronounce your name. For multiple choice, do you have a recommended format for the question structure? Should there be directions such as select one, select more than one?
So the recommended format usually is some instructions. It depends. So it depends on your learners. I normally think that the question and just the answers themselves is a good place to start. Maybe you include that on a resource on how to answer questions. I don't know that I would specifically say add it on each and every question unless it's one that we don't normally see. We normally see multiple choice, multiple answer, multiple choice, singular answer, true, false, which is, a multiple choice, singular answer. But on ones that are drag and drop or matching, I think maybe it would be okay to include specific instructions. It just depends on your learner and who your audience is. I don't know that there's any standard, but I would say most learners are typically able to answer those questions just as is with no additional instructions.
Thank you. And the next question is from Jolene. I have had trouble adding pictures to the quiz question. Can you please demo for me?
Okay, sure, we can go back in. And depending on where you're adding the images.
Adding pictures.
Yeah, and so let's say we add them in the question itself, and I'm not sure I have a picture of the moon to add here, but let's say we just insert picture here, and again, I'm not in any special area, I'm just in the main area here. Let's see if I have an appropriate picture here. Let's just go for the generic motorcycle. This is a motorcycle I actually owned many years ago, one of my first motorcycles. So when we go into the slide view, we can see the image itself. We can change the layout here. We can add emphasis on the question with a little bit of supporting information on the image. And again, you can play with whichever one works best. But again, this can be adjusted later. So we'll add this and leave it as is, but this is where you would normally add a picture. And you would do the same thing for feedback or wherever else you needed imagery. But going back and just kind of giving you a review, in your question area, you would just click the insert picture here, browse for it, and it should insert it. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you. And the next question is from Angeli. Can you also control the text spacing, for example, between the answer options?
Oh, between the answer. Well, let's take a look at our multiple choice. So I think, I know you can control the size. So we can make these larger and smaller as need be, which may include some of the spacing, but I don't believe we can include the in-between line spacing on this one. Michael, do you have any insight on that? I don't believe that's possible, is it?
Actually, it's not possible. Yeah, you are right. Maybe it will change in the further versions of iSpring QuizMaker, but right now it's not possible.
Right, and so that's a pretty nuanced edit. So I would say first try the sizing and see if that helps. You can go down to 16 or try custom sizes. But yeah, for now, these are based on whatever size the font is in order to give clear spacing between.
Thank you very much. And another question is from Sue. Is it better to fail people if they don't meet the required grade in the quiz, or allow them to take the questions over and over until they actually pass?
I think that we all have had that question at one point in time. It depends on the content. In some cases you really need, or maybe you're constrained by law or policy that the learner has to pass a quiz in order to move forward. And in some cases, they just really need to, as we mentioned, using the three-stage model, just have that information refreshed. So it depends. If scoring is mandated by the learning itself, of course you have to score. If it's one thing that you just want to make sure that the learner understands what has been presented in that content, you can allow them to take it over and over. From a learning point of view, if I had my particular way, I would say, no scoring unless it's, say, a gamified experience where score is important. It really depends, but normally I would say, not making a learner fail would probably be a good thing.
Thank you very much. And moving on to the question from Cynthia. Can you please show how to get to the math editor again?
Sure. Let's take a look here. We'll go back into Quizmaker. And I think on this one, just so I don't mess with the questions, I'll just go here and I'll add a new question. We'll just do multiple choice so that we have something simple. In this case, we would go here to the insert equation, and this would be on the question part. Okay, we can do that for the line-by-line answers, but this is where we would add the math symbols. And again, I won't add any here, but you can go in and add different ones based on whatever your formula is. Then I'll exit, and it has it here. You would see it either in the preview or the slide view as an equation area on the left or the right, sorry. Same thing for each potential answer. You could add the quiz, the information there as well. I'll just randomly throw in some equation items, and this is where you would say pick which one of these is correct or what have you, but it's all right there. And again, it says alternative here because that was one of the answers in the form just as is, but you could edit that out, add additional information where needed, or include it. So it's right here. It's the, I don't know what character that is, but it looks like an A second power, and it's the equation symbol.
Thank you very much. And let's move on to the question from Robert. In a lengthy presentation that has multiple quizzes, is there a way to send just one email that reports results instead of an email for each quiz? And Michael, you're more than welcome to help with that one.
I am not sure about that. So, Michael, do you have an answer for that?
Yes, I have. Well, each will be evaluated independently, and quiz results will be sent separately. So I'm sorry to say that there is no way to send one sent result for every quizzes in your presentation. So.
Yeah, understood. That's a good thought, though. But yeah, so every quiz is self-contained, and therefore is send different email, different results for each self-contained quiz. So, well, thank you for that information, though.
All right, so the next question from Pam. Please show again where to insert the Excel spreadsheet of questions.
Sure, it's in the import area, so I'll go back into Quizmaker. It's on the main menu here in the orange area. We'll click on that. Okay, and we can import questions here from Excel spreadsheet, or you could do Quizmaker itself, but in this case we use the template provided by iSpring, and that's where you would do it, and then ask you where it is and give a file name. You can name the new group, but this is where it is. So.
All right, thanks a lot. And the next question is from Kevin. It's kind of a long one, so Michael, if you want to take a look in the question box at it. So the question is, how can I use randomized question sets where I have 4 items, but 3 items in each of 4's item slots? The system randoming selecting just one of the 3 items to show for each of 4 questions in the quiz. Is there a support page explaining this?
Yeah, I am still looking for that, but Michael, do you know?
Well, yes, you can select a group of questions you created by clicking on its name in the questions list, and you'll see a menu that will allow you to select a number of randomly picked questions, shows the total number of created questions. The same can be done with multiple groups of questions. So you can adjust this in the properties menu. When you have multiple question groups created, you can select a number of the groups needed to be picked randomly, as well as the questions. So once you open the properties menu, you can go to the navigation section, and you'll see question pool options. You need to select random groups and just select a number from the drop-down menu.
Right, and I'm showing that on screen here. So, and then you can also shuffle these questions from those groups, just on those groups themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so you can do all or individual groups having shuffled questions. So that was a pretty detailed question from our participant. Maybe we can also answer that. I couldn't find it on the side, Polina. Sorry, I couldn't find it quick enough. So
that's fine, no problem. And can you please quickly show where's the template for Excel?
Sure, it's available online from the iSpring website here, and we can put that in the discussion or the area, and this is where you would see the sample template file here. It's a link and it downloads an Excel spreadsheet.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that I shared the link in the chat box with all the attendees. So you should be seeing it. All right, and could you please review hotspot question? Question from Priscilla.
Sure, we can take a look at it. So you would create it in the same way. Here, let's go down and add it to the end here. So it's a graded question, hotspot. It is very interesting, and so we'll choose the image here instead of up here. So we'll choose an image we're going to use for the hotspot. We'll use that same generic motorcycle, and we will point at the correct area. So here we will say, I don't know, click on the seat. Click on the motorcycles. Seat. Whoops, put the apostrophe in the wrong place. My bad. Okay. So, and then once we have instructions, then we create our hotspot. In this case, I'm going to go freeform, and it'll take just a quick second. But in freeform, you click the area, only the area you want. You could do a rectangle. You could do an oval. In this case, I'm going to specifically outline the seat of this image, the area only that I want the user to click. Getting a little bit of grass here, but that's okay. Okay, so now we have a hotspot. We'll preview this question. Okay, and we will click off of it. Okay, and we'll submit. We'll say that's not right. We'll refresh it, and this time I'll click on it. It shows you where you've clicked. We'll submit, and it says, hey, you got it right. So there's different things you can do with that, obviously, but that's one way to do it. And again, it's really easy to create. You can create custom hotspots, or you can go with the rectangular oval.
All right, perfect. And we got a feedback from Kevin, who had a very detailed question. He says, my question about randomized question sets has been answered satisfactorily. I can take it from here. Thanks. All right, and the next question from Angeli. When reviewing the results, for example, the word bank options, does hovering over the answers the only option to review? And can we remote the feedback message incorrect? You didn't choose the correct response. Currently, I have selected none from the feedback drop-down list.
Okay, I'm not sure I followed all of that, but so which type of question was it, Paulina? Like which type of quiz question was it?
Word bank.
Word bank. Okay, so let's take the word bank here. We'll preview it, and I think the question had to do with hovering over the image. Is that correct? Hovering over the word?
Yes, hovering over the answers.
Okay, and so notice that they hover and highlight yellow, and then what's the other question of that?
Can we remove the feedback message in quotes, incorrect, you didn't choose the correct response.
Oh, okay. So we could do one of a couple of ways, and Michael jump in here. I'm going to get out of this. So in the feedback and branching, the default is that's right or that's correct, but we can go in and edit this as well, right? We can answer correct or incorrect, or we could simply, we don't have to have a message, is that right? We can just simply go to the next question rather than seeing the information here.
Yes, you can just disable that feedback message, or you can also, I believe that question is regarding to the incorrect text at the top of the feedback message. So you can also edit that in the player settings, right next to the properties.
Oh, right.
So yeah, that's right. You need to select text labels and input your text what you want to search for. Like in this case, incorrect.
Yeah, is that further down? Sorry.
Mm-hmm. So on the left side of this list, you can see all the text labels of the messages and buttons options in the player. And on the right side, you can edit this text to your liking, so it corresponds to your needs better. So if you leave it blank, there will be no text showing at all.
Okay, in this case, so if they wanted incorrect based on where it was, they would just say, they would delete it here and it wouldn't come up.
Yeah.
Or it would just be blank. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so that's in the player settings and then here in the text labels. So, okay, good.
All right, and let's cover the last question for today's session from Alan. Is it possible to open an info slide from any slide to open it as a pop-up window?
That's interesting. So I wonder if that's inside the quiz slide questions or in the regular area. So they want to open a pop-up. I don't. So Michael, I don't believe.
Slide.
Oh, for the info slide.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Michael?
Redirect your student. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
So there is no way to show it as a pop-up message, but instead you can just redirect your student by using the branching options at the bottom of the screen. So once you create an info slide, you can select this slide in that menu, depending on how a student answered your question, correctly or incorrectly. And this info slide can contain all kind of information like video, audio, or an image. So this may be helpful in sometimes.
Right.
And am I correct that you can also enter the feedback for, like the detailed sort of feedback in the feedback messages for correct, incorrect answers for each question?
Yes, you can also select change the type of feedback to by question or by answer, and you can not only edit the text of the feedback message, but also add an image or audio or even hyperlink to it. And I believe an equation, if I remember it correctly, yeah. By clicking on the corresponding options in that feedback editing window.
Great.
Right, and to add on to that, I know the question was about a pop-up, but in this case, if the information was available online, while it wouldn't specifically be a pop-up, they could add information here as a link to see more information. So.
Yep. Hope that helps.
Yeah. If you add a hyperlink, it will be shown as a pop-up window. Yeah, that's correct.
Great, thank you.
All right, so it looks like we've covered all the questions that came in the chat box today, and thank you very much, guys, for sending this in. And I would like to thank both Michaels for disclosing this topic and taking care of the questions today. Thank you very much, guys, for doing that.
Very cool. Thank you for having me today. And thank you, Michael, for all the help.
Thank you.
All right, so I would like to mention at this point that next week we're having our 6th lesson, and it's going to be about creating interactive and immersive content. We will cover how to engage learners, or not we, but Michael will cover how to engage learners with increased interactivity, when it's beneficial to use branching scenarios in your content, and he will talk about creating actual branching scenarios. So I think this will be a very exciting session. And if you guys liked this particular webinar, please let us know in the comments section. And if you would like to share any other detailed feedback, maybe you're more than welcome to submit the message, to send the message directly to me, and I will be more than happy to incorporate it for our future webinars. And at this point, I think we're ready to wrap up. So thank you very much, guys, for attending. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and
Very cool. Thank you, Paulina.
We'll see you next week. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.